In this video, I want to wrap up our section on objects by not really talking about objects too much. Instead, we're going to talk about an alternative way we can define variables in JavaScript, an alternative from what we've been using so far, which is the let keyword. To explore this alternative, let's go ahead and create a new file in the objects folder. I'm going to call this one const, which is short for constant. That's const.js. And in here, let's start with an example creating a let-based variable. Super simple. Let is raining equal true, and then we'll say at some point later it stops raining, so we can assign a new value to is raining. I'll set it equal to false, and then maybe we print the status, whether or not it's raining. So console.log is raining. Based off of what we've covered in the very first video, we should know that the value that's going to print would be false. If I run the script, node const.js, that's exactly what we get. We started off with true, we reassign to false, and we get false when we print it. This is with a let-based variable. There is another way we can create variables. Instead of using let right here, we use const. The rest is the same. We still provide a variable name and we still assign it some value, whether it's a string, boolean, number, object, function, or anything else. The only difference between let-based variables and const-based variables is that you can't reassign a constant after it has been created. So right here, we create our constant. Right here, we try to reassign it. This is illegal with constants. We can prove it's illegal by running the script. I save the file, I rerun things, and what do we get? We get a big old error message, type error, assignment to constant variable. We can see exactly where this is occurring. It's on line 3 of const.js. Line 3 is sitting right here. Now, if we were to comment out this line and run the script, things would work as expected. We give a value to is raining, and later on in the program, we reference it. If we rerun the script, we can prove it still works. We see true right here. Now you might be wondering, why is this useful? It doesn't make much sense to create a variable if we're never going to reassign it, but look at a lot of the programs we've written so far. For example, in this file, we create num, min, max, and random number. At no point do we ever reassign any of those. And if we crack open one of our other files, let's say something from functions like function scope, we can see we create a variable here that we don't reassign, we create one here that we don't reassign, and we create two down below we don't reassign either. So there's a lot of situations in software development where we're trying to create a variable and we know we're never going to reassign its value. In that case, it is best to use a constant over a let-based variable. Now, it's important to remember that this only applies when we're trying to reassign a variable's value. Imagine our variable was an object. I'm going to switch is raining over to person, and we'll make this a very simple object, an object with a single property age set equal to our age. Now this is a constant, which means that we still can't reassign its value. So if I tried to set person equal to a new object, that would fail. I could then try to print out person, but it's not going to matter because the program is going to fail as soon as we try to reassign the constant value. But we're still able to manipulate that object, which means that I can still access person.age and give that a new value. For example, I could increase it by 1, setting it equal to 28. This is invalid. I'm trying to reassign person. This is valid because I'm just changing one of the object's properties. So if we save the script in this state, we're going to see that everything works as expected. Over here in the terminal, we're going to get our object printing where age equals 28. If I did try to bring this line into the mix, we would once again see an error related to trying to assign a new value to a constant variable. I'm going to add those comments right back in, removing the line that was breaking the program. And that is it for the differences between const and let. The only difference is that const-based variables cannot have their values reassigned. Everything related to scoping or valid variable naming, all of that is identical between the two. Now at this point, people often ask, why use const at all? We've been able to get by just fine using let. Why not continue to just use let throughout the entire course? And the answer mostly has to do with code readability. So when we create a variable, we have two ways to describe the details of that variable. If we create a variable and say it's a constant, we're telling whoever's reading the code, whether it's someone else or ourselves later, that this is a variable whose value is never going to change. That makes it really easy to reason about what some code does. If a variable is going to change, that's fine. We can just switch it from a const to a let-based variable. Once again, that provides clear semantics to whoever's looking at the program. They can say, okay, this is a let-based variable, which means, well, this is the value at the moment. The value is probably going to be changed somewhere down the line, so I should keep an eye out for that. It really just comes down to semantics. It allows us to better describe what a variable is intended to do. There's no big coding challenge for this one, but I do want you to take a quick moment to analyze one of the files we've created before. This is the grade calc program that you created in the last section. In here, we have a few different variables. What I'd like you to do is go through the program and look at each one, figuring out if it really needs to be a let or if it could be a const. So take a few seconds to go through all of the variables, figuring out which way it should be declared. When you're done, you can go ahead and click play, and I'll go through the process together. See you in a second. All right, let's go ahead and move through each variable. First one, grade calc. Does grade calc ever get reassigned? And the answer is no. The only time we ever reference it is when we call it, which is not a reassignment. That means we could switch this over to a const for clearer semantics. Next up, percent. Does percent ever get reassigned? No. It gets referenced about 5 different times, but its value is only referenced. It's never changed, which means that this could also be a const. Next up, we have letter grade. Letter grade gets actually changed 5 different times, and it also gets referenced once. That means we couldn't make this a const because all of these lines would fail. We can't reassign a constant value, so this one is actually going to stay at let. We move through the file, no other variables, and right near the end, we have just one more. We have result, which is referenced a single time, and that means we can switch it over to const instead of let. So if I were given this program, I could really quickly glance at it and realize that the only variable that ever changes is this one, providing clear semantics as to what's going on with the program. When I see my constants, I can take a quick peek at them, realize their value never changes, and then move through the rest of the script, figuring out how things work. That's it for constants, nothing too crazy there. That's it for this video, but it's also it for this section. In this section, we learned about objects, which allow us to model things in the real world. They allow us to store related information in one place. Now from here, we're going to move on to the next section, which is the last section that covers JavaScript basics. So there's one more big new topic we have to cover before we can create programs that really do anything meaningful. And this is the array. The array allows us to store list-based data, which is what makes up pretty much every app out there. A list of notes, a list of to-dos, a list of emails, a list of users. So this is going to be a very important topic to explore. I'm super excited to get to that section, so let's go ahead and jump right in.